It's been a brutal winter, heavy wet snows followed by relatively severe frosts, though for the eucalyptus the most damaging weather event was Storm Eowyn. Historically one of Ireland's most severe storms, with a wind gust of 183 kilometres an hour recorded at Macehead. Wind direction, initially from the southeast, veered round to the west and eventually northwesterly, as the eye of the storm came in from the Atlantic and tracked up the west coast, devastating the foliage of all the eucalyptus along the boundary here at Clounsnaghta. Even the hardy mountain gums, Dalrai ampliana, have been scorched. The viminalis that a few months ago were showing signs of maturity hardening with lots of lush foliage have been ravaged. And yet, despite having a reputation for being shallow rooted and blowing over easily in the gales, very few have succumbed, 6 in total and none of the larger specimens. Whereas many of Ireland's Sitka spruce forests were devastated by Storm Eowyn. Being fair, these particular trees were taller and on a more exposed south-facing slope, the main direction Storm Eowyn came from. Even though I've seen other plantations which have been badly damaged on less exposed north-facing slopes. The notion that eucalyptus trees aren't wind resilient simply isn't true. The scorched foliage will recover, or rather it will be replaced with new growth. That's already happening. I'm so pleased that these ovata are putting out new growth too. Ovata grow very fast, can be coppiced and are excellent firewood. I'm also keen on Eucalyptus globulus, blue gum. Unfortunately they do get covered in blue gum psyllid, though it's not as devastating a pest as it looks. Growth rates will be affected as the trees put reserves of energy into growing new foliage, though as long as the weather stays mild, as it's forecast to do, they'll all be fine. A major factor causing trees to be uprooted is precipitation, rainfall. In contrast to the preceding 12 months, rainfall in the past year has been below the long-term average, especially so during the past 3 months. Trees are less stable in saturated ground. Fingers crossed we don't have a major storm following a period of high precipitation. Temperatures are on the way up. That's a clear and undeniable trend. Note the LTA in the tables isn't an increase since pre-industrial levels, which is the baseline reported in mainstream media. In the tables, the figures are from 1981 to 2010. For the first 3 months of this year, temperatures have been 1.7 degrees C above this average. Definitely time to start planting fast-growing carbon capture devices. Honeybee colonies in the US are projected to decline by 70% during 2025. They've been declining steadily for the past few decades. A contributing factor is a lack of nutrition caused by climate change. Flowers are blooming earlier and later in the season, depriving bees of food when they most need it during the summer. The research I've done is scant, so I'm happy to be challenged and corrected, though the figure of 70% is quoted by 2 of the largest media outlets in the US and should raise alarm bells. What I know to be fact, because I'm here, is that it's the end of March and a couple of the eucalyptus varieties are flowering. If you're a beekeeper, then pulverulenta are definitely worth trialling. They flower very early or very quickly after being planted, within a couple of years. The bees love the flowers. Paulownia, the reduction in rainfall during the past 12 months has definitely suited them. They prefer drier conditions, which is why they do so well in Spain and Eastern Europe. As well as their roots being drier, they rot if too wet. The dry conditions have reduced slug numbers considerably. I can count on the fingers of both hands how many I've seen this year. The slugs munched their way through all the early growth on the less tall specimens last year. Some good new shoots on this one. The larger specimens are thriving. Excellent new growth. My intention this year is to prune away some of the lower growth on that particular tree, and if a tree looks like this with one main shoot and a branch coming out, then I'll prune away the branch to encourage the main stem to grow larger and taller. I've potted on more Fortunii to plant out this area. They'll be larger trees when I do so, and they've also had much better nourishment. So I'm hopeful that, unlike last year, I'm going to have success. Paulownia take a while to flower. These have been in the ground for 4 years and there's no sign of them doing so. Still, once they do, masses of purple flowers, another great source of forage for bees. I didn't have any success a couple of years ago when I planted out Robinia pseudoacacia. That was a period of high rainfall and my feeling is the slugs ate all the new growth. I wasn't sure this one had survived Storm Eowyn. The stems turned a really dark black colour. They've since greened up, and as you can see, lots of healthy fresh shoots. Check out those thorns. Medieval. The timber of black locust, the common name for Robinia pseudoacacia, is highly rot resistant. I'll be keeping these duckboards and polytunnels. They're treated timber. It's worked out really well. I'm not sure how long they're going to last before actually rotting. Can be very damp in these polytunnels. Anyway, I'm moving away from chemically treated timber, and from now on, in order to preserve any racks or growing equipment that is timber, I'm going to use my own version of Yagi Sugi. Besides the preserving qualities, I really like the finish. I'm also moving away from plastic. These plug trays have been somewhat environmentally friendly in terms of I've reused them. I'd estimate the large ones are strong enough to be reused for perhaps 5 to 10 seasons. The smaller ones, 1 to 3, they break quite easily. Even the large ones break. In their place, I'm going to be using these plant fibre pots, which are 100% biodegradable. I think these will also help with moisture, how would I put it, moisture control. So they'll dry out reasonably quickly, allowing the roots oxygen so that the roots will be more healthy. And I've also come up with a design for the racks which I'll put them on that I'm hoping will reduce the amount of water that I need to use to keep them hydrated. The forester gave me a few of these non-woven biodegradable grow bags. In the past, when I've been potting on, I've used these poly pots, so they're polythene. I've done some research. These are biodegradable, but they're biodegradable in 30 to 50 years. That's not a time scale that I find acceptable. I guess if you are planting trees, which the forester is going to be doing, or primarily using them for planting trees, then that is an acceptable time frame. For me personally, I'd rather use something like these truly compostable pots. I used what are considered to be biodegradable bags for packing my plant orders in, and I'll still use them for that. They're better than using completely plastic bags. But again, I did a wee experiment, and that bag that you see in picture has been hanging on that tree for a couple of years. Previous to that, it was soaking in water for almost 2 years. So in 4 years, it hasn't broken down despite exposure to sunlight, heat, and organic decaying matter in 4 years. It's taken a while to put this video together, about a week, and during that time, the temperatures have been extraordinary. Up to 19 degrees C. I did say earlier that the temperatures, the weather was set to be mild. It's been better than mild, and that's certainly suited the eucalyptus. I'm not expecting all of the eucalyptus stock to recover from their battering during the winter, especially Storm Eowyn. However, what is truly astonishing is that these globulus are coming out with new growth. I am truly gobsmacked. Incredible. Even some of these regnans, which just look truly blasted, are coming out with some new growth. I am, as I say, just completely astonished. Unbelievable. Well, it's believable because it's fact. You have it there. Like the nursery stock, I'm not expecting them all to survive or to recover. But when I came out the other day, this globulus had also started to put on fresh growth all the way down the stem here. Hopefully this is coming out on camera. I just think it's marvellous, incredible. Very big fan of globulus. I am definitely going to be planting a lot more of them here. Earlier in the video I showed you just how ravaged these Rod Y, Eucalyptus Rod Y on the bank are. And I wasn't actually very hopeful that this one here, the tallest one, would survive, had survived. I thought it was dead. And yet likewise, oh, look at that. Just incredible. I am truly gobsmacked. New growth coming out everywhere. Fantastic. One of the few eucalyptus that did blow over succumbed to Storm Eowyn. This is Parvula, and I'd been hopeful that this would recover, put out some new growth, and I just hadn't been seeing it. And then all of a sudden this morning when I came out, and it is very small, and there's a better one there, so that's 2 new shoots. Just amazing. If you look back through the videos, I think it's to December 23 when I planted these Rod Y here to dry up what is generally a very damp, wet piece of ground. When they went into the ground, they were weak as seedlings due to my poor feeding regime, and they didn't really do very much. And now, despite the poor winter, they've all got growth, and some of them have got very healthy new growth. I think this is a gunny eye, and it blew over in the storm prior to Storm Eowyn. I cut it back after Storm Eowyn, and I wasn't sure if it was going to survive or not. And here we are, new fresh growth coming. Quite incredible. Another wee bud, looks as though it's just starting there. This is by far the most exposed corner of my patch, and this is another Rodwai, and again new growth coming. Fantastic. I wish Rodwai seed was more readily available. I said a few years ago that I thought Rodwai was a species that would suit Ireland, and now I'm convinced of it. Even these, I mean, you just look at that and you think, well, that's dead. And yet, fabulous new growth coming. Quite extraordinary. Hopefully that's coming out on the camera. I'll try and get a better angle with the sun. Just remarkable. It's still very exposed here, though it's from a southerly direction. And again, Rodwai. Fantastic. So pleased. Very high hopes for Rodwai. Can be coppiced, is grown commercially for firewood, and it's also grown as shade and shelter for livestock. Look at all the new buds on that. Outstanding. The hybrid poplar have burst into full leaf, or the arbora at the back has burst into full leaf, and these poplar robusta at the front aren't far off it. As always, thanks for taking the time, much appreciated.